Hey, what's going on, guys? Appreciate you stopping by. There's been a lot of discussions over the last few days about the potential for a mass grid down situation in the United States and in other countries. We had a situation back, I believe it was around August 11th in Indiana, where they had massive storms and had wide range power outages going on there. And these storms were like 100-mile-an-hour winds, and was definitely a huge problem. And brought up the, how long does it take for repairs when something like that happens? Very similar to when a hurricane comes through an area. Then we've just recently had it reportedly that Iran conducted a cyber attack on England and knocked out a power plant there for 4 days. That's what I'm hearing as far as being reported. Who knows what the truth really is, but that's concerning because, we've seen numerous apparent cyber attacks happen within the United States with telecommunications and a variety of other industries that they didn't come out and say that's what it was, but it seemed kind of fishy. And you also had Iran at times taking responsibility for some of these things, or groups in Iran that were taking responsibility. Now we have this economic storm that the United States is supposedly unleashing on Iran with mass sanctions and whatever is supposed to happen there. And Iran is saying that if that occurs, they are going to strike at the heart of the United States. And, the belief is that cyber attacks is what could occur. There's been a long-standing belief, along with some evidence and experts out there that say that this is reality, that we could have circuits and chips and microprocessors that are in a lot of our equipment, industrial equipment, military equipment, and power equipment that have small little instructions and abilities to be controlled by other countries such as China. And that if it's connected to a network which is connected to the internet, which most of this stuff is, that a signal can be sent that would cause basically destruction of that piece of equipment. That was done several years ago by Israel into Iran, and they were able to control that equipment in Iran and cause it to malfunction and get destroyed. So it's not without case study, it's not without precedent that these things are possible. So the big question is, what happens if something were to occur and you had a mass grid down across the United States and you lost transformers, critical transformers and substations? I'm not talking about what is up on top of a telephone pole. I'm talking about these substations that have massive pieces of equipment that right now it's reportedly taking 2 to 3 years to get replacements. What would happen if something were to occur? It could be an EMP, it could be a solar flare, it could be a cyber attack, or it could be a direct attack on these substations. If across the United States, pretty much the entire grid went down and all of that equipment needed to be replaced, all those, substations and critical transformers need to be replaced, what would happen here in the United States? Well, to start with, there was recently a newspaper article that talked about 18 months, that it would take 18 months to get the power back on, or to start getting it back on. I think that is very, very optimistic, because if the whole entire grid went down, and in today's world where the grid is up and everything is pretty much functioning, and it's taken 2 to 3 years for some of these parts, I don't see how that it could take that same amount of time if the grid was completely down, because that has to provide an incredible amount of complexity and operational obstacles to all of those repairs. There's going to be an inability to communicate with workers, with companies. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I mean, comment below if I'm missing something, then tell me. But I don't see how the lead time to get replacement parts would remain the same in a complete grid down situation than when the grid's up. That makes no sense to me. The other situation that really comes to mind is, we had the EMP commission many years ago that talked about that if we had an EMP, which would be very similar to a complete grid down situation, what they're talking about if there was a cyber attack or something like that, that 90% of the population would die within a year. And I believe that is very accurate. I also think that if it was grid down, not EMP, but basically all the power was lost in the country, that 90% death rate is correct. I don't think people, and I'm not trying to go overboard here in emphasizing how bad it would be, but I don't think people realize just how bad the conditions would be. Of course, different parts of the country, it's going to be different. Big cities are going to be different than some tiny, small town, out in the middle of the woods, down some logging road. There's going to be differences. But what I think is going to remain the same is desperation. You're going to have people that were not prepared or not prepared enough, and they are going to become desperate. Not to get too morbid here, but when you are a mom or a dad and you're looking at your kids and your kids are hungry, you're going to do whatever you have to do to try to provide them food and nourishment. And that's going to lead to a massive amount of violence, in my opinion. I think that 90% die-off, a large amount of that is starvation, but a large amount of it is due to violence. I think you're going to have groups of people that are going to come together, and they're going to go across areas and pillage and steal. And absolutely, there's going to be violence there, and they're going to do whatever they have to do to take what they want. Maybe there's an option to join them. I don't know. But we have a lot of bad people out there now. There is evil in this world. There's evil in this country. In every city, there is absolute evil. And that evil is going to flourish in a situation like this. And that's one of the reasons why it is so incredibly important to prepare now. Now, if the grid goes down and the likely time frame is years, which I think is correct, it's years, then that's the reason why you work on a food storage system, to target, 3 months, then 6 months, then 9 months, then maybe a year, then maybe 2 years for however many people that are going to be in your group. And by the way, I mentioned group because if you think that you can be a lone wolf, one person or two people on a piece of property and go it alone. I think in 99% of the cases, that's very unrealistic. Security, having LPOPs, having, the ability to monitor the property, different directions, to have people go out and patrol some distance from the property, at least the property edges, and to try to get some early warning if there's any activity in the area. That is incredibly important. And to do that with only one or two people, it's not possible. Utilizing technology, if you have the ability to power it, is certainly beneficial, but you need numbers. You need numbers. So you're going to need food for all the people that are in that group. And then you need the ability to supplement that food, to make it last longer. Or that food is used to supplement what you're growing, what you're raising, if you're raising rabbits or chickens, ducks, whatever, turkeys. All of these things that you can do now in preparation for if something like this were to happen is going to be incredibly valuable. And I tell you, as I'm sitting here right now, I just don't think that most preppers, I hate that term, by the way. I grew up in the 80s. It was survivalists, and then the mainstream media said, well, if you're a survivalist, then you're some crazy guy out in the woods wanting to do harm. So that got dropped for the most part. But yeah, if you're preparedness minded, then I don't think most people really realize just how bad it would get. And that should motivate you to prepare even more and to get started now. Now, maybe it won't happen. I don't know what the chances are that it could happen. What I do believe is the chances are getting better. I think the chances are increasing. And who knows? So what are your thoughts? What do you think the chances are that something like this could happen? Maybe it's not a solar flare. Maybe it's not EMP. Maybe it is cyber attack. Maybe it's direct attacks on these substations to destroy the electrical infrastructure of the United States. They are horribly protected. And that's been proven by other situations that have occurred. So comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Anyways, that's it. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Comment below. That also helps the channel. And share with like-minded folks. And that's it. You guys stay safe. Take care. We'll see you in the next one.
So I ran from the cities and the noise and lies, found a piece of ground under open skies, hands in the dirt, sweat on my shirt, learning what living's really worth. While crooked men shake hands in rooms, selling souls to corporate suits. Society's sick, but I found the cure, a back road life, honest and pure. They can keep their throne and their golden news. This life out here's my modern exodus. I traded screens for a sunrise, callous palms, blisters, pride, planted seeds where hope was.